Hello, everybody. Good morning. Oh my gosh, good afternoon. It could be morning where you are. Could be night where you are. I am Rachel Milano, founder of REMwell Foundation. Today's topic, we have been working on a series called Talk Till Someone Listens. And so today's topic, I just want to make sure my chat is up and going. Hello, room. Hi, room. Okay, so let's hope I get somebody in my room today. Who knows? I'll be here talking until someone listens, or if someone needs me to listen, I'll be here. In any event, I have been doing this series on talking till someone listens. The issues of traumatic violation are what's on the table, and I've been doing each episode kind of based off of my Instagram posts, and we are taking these directly from a collection of booklets, Living with TV. TV standing for traumatic violation. So I keep trying to look at the screen, but then it looks like I'm not looking at you. Then I have to look at the dot on the little webcam thing, and then it looks more like I'm looking at you, but then I feel weird. So anyways, let me begin by talking a little bit about what we have been discussing. I did answer some questions about why it has taken so long, or why it does take so long for some traumatic violation survivors to come out and talk. It's so distressing sometimes when I'm reading through posts on social media and I see people who are making light of or joking or making jest of sexual violation, and how long it takes for survivors to come out, and kind of making it like it's all about money, or the reason we come out is because we want attention. Like, I'm sorry, but this is not really the attention that we want. I would rather be known for something like being the president, or you know, being an Olympic champion, or maybe writing some great prose, or, you know, anything, you know, other than being a sexual assault victim, survivor, and now thriving survivor. I would choose anything over having experienced domestic violence or childhood maltreatment and neglect, or I would choose any other thing. Unfortunately, it's really sickening how society swings this big pendulum. Like, oh yeah, let's all get on the bandwagon, and we're in favor of doing social justice, and we're in favor of making sure that survivors are heard and their voice is heard. And then the pendulum swings down here to this kind of place where we're complacent and not really doing anything about it. And then it swings over here to, hey, shut up, we're tired of hearing you. It's enough of that, and we're tired of it. And, you know, the pendulum keeps swinging in these. How do we really find solutions when we are on this kind of social roller coaster that challenges the opportunities necessary when they are present to actually do anything constructive about it? Which is part of why I'm pushing towards this thing called conscious cause consciousness. To not just be aware, to, you know, we've been aware for eons, like rape isn't new, sexual molestation, and isn't that an easier term, it's not new. Child abuse is not new. Like, these things have been around since the foundation of mankind. So this whole idea of stop it, and let's stop child abuse, and let's stop sexual abuse, and let's get real. The reality is you have humans who are born and are raised in circumstances and environments which create situations that are high risk. And you have people who are prowling for those high risk situations, looking for vulnerable opportunities. And no one is immune. No one is at some point in their life, not susceptible to becoming a victim of something, But everyone should not have these kinds of stories. Everyone should not have a traumatic violation story. But a third of us, a third of the population does. So that is going to be a topic that we will talk about. But each topic is kind of feeding into another topic. The issue is magnanimous. I mean, the issue is just so far-reaching that I could never put it all in one capsule and try to reveal the various components and aspects and elements of it in one shot. Like it's not something that can be done in a concentrated effort. So that's why the series was developed. So we've started already talking about what it is to have internal amputations. You know, do all traumatic violation survivors suffer or experience internal amputations? No. Some do, especially those who have experienced complex or compounding violations, compounding traumatic violations, and those who have had more positive experiences in their life and more healthy adjustments, more healthy behavioral development, and then were at some point impacted by traumatic violation, they have a less likelihood of having internal amputations. In each of these, I'm going to be talking more and expound more on each of them as time goes by. And if anyone ever has questions, don't leave it where I left it. You can always ask questions and I can expound upon it. In fact, a lot of times people say, well, why do you use so many different words? And you just said, why can't you just say it one way? Well, because there are different people listening. It's like different languages. We don't all, if I sat here and spoke Ebonics to you, which I could, if I did it in that way, it would be harder for the message to reach as many people as possible. So I try to keep the format as neutral, but also saying it in as many ways as can be understood. So I might say one thing 5 different ways in one moment, but that is because I want to make sure I capture, somebody will say, oh, I get that. Another person will say, well, I don't get it like that. So I'm trying to kind of feel that out as much as possible based on just experience talking with survivors. And, you know, everybody has different academic levels. I'm not a college student. I've never been a college student. I have a GED, but I have 360 degrees of life experience to pass on. And so that is what I'm offering here. I'm offering a layman's approach from empirical knowledge, from empirical wisdom on the core of traumatic violation and how it is directly and indirectly impacting us all on a socioeconomic level. So we also talked about, let's see, what else did we talk about? We haven't made it very far yet. So hopefully today, which is what we're going to talk about, how food and restoration, traumatic violation, and food, the relationships that we have with food are unique and also very, very influential in our development and in our personal progress. So that being said, I will start off with some ideas about food, right? And then I will kind of end with how that impacts traumatic violation survivors and what we can do, right? So food is one of those things that in life is explored on all kinds of levels with various depths. And if you think about it, there are celebrations around food. You have a baby shower, you have a wedding, you have an anniversary, you have all kinds of celebrations where socially we come together, and food is part of what binds us and unites us in that common experience. There's religious reasons. In fact, you can go to some churches and they may break bread together. They may go to dinner afterwards or breakfast beforehand. Food is bonding. It is socially bonding. Certain types of food are more bonding than other types of food. Food is used in sexually to heighten the sexual experience. Strawberries, whipped cream, berries of all other sorts, you know, cheese, wine, all these things are used to heighten the experience of sexual activity. So food is used to help unite and bond the chemistry in intimate relationships, right? More intimate, more deeply intimate relationships. Because intimacy has many levels. In fact, food is an act of intimacy. We'll talk about that. In any event, we also talk about the palate, just that thing in your mouth, that palate in your mouth. That wants to experience, right? You want to like be, some people are full-fledged foodies and some people are not full-fledged foodies, but they just want to enjoy some stuff. That tastes so good. Oh, that's nice, right? And they want to try this from this culture and that from that culture. And they want to go to this country and that country. And they want to try this country's food and that country's food. And they like their mama's food from the South and they like their mama's food from the North. It's all just part of the palate's experience. They want to taste what that's like. They want to have a memory programmed in with the feelings and the flavors and that whole exploration, right? So that is the enjoyment of the palate. So just for one's personal enjoyment, right? Then you have other types of things like weight control, right? You gotta, you know, use it to manage, right? So food can be used to manage outwardly appearances, inwardly health, right? So some people use it because they need to gain weight. They don't weigh enough. Some people use it, and certain types of it, to lose weight, right? And then there are those who are using it for specific types of weight. Muscle weight. They want more muscle mass. They want to be more toned. There are people who are doing it just strictly for nutrition, right? And they just want the dietary benefits, and that's it. They cut it off at that. So food is life, and it keeps me alive, and end of story. So I'm just throwing out there the various uses of food. Food is used to create, I don't want to say like sacrifice, but it is. Food is used to perform sacrifices, sometimes religious, and sometimes the sacrifice of the food, or what we would use as food, and it is offered up to a deity, right? So there is that type of sacrifice. And then there's also the sacrifice of, like right now, I believe a lot of people are celebrating Lent or practicing Lent. It is a self-sacrificing, right? And we associate that self-sacrifice with some spiritual benefit, with some religious, that some parameter within the religious definition. So Muslims also practice a observance of self-sustaining, what is the word? Abstaining. Thank you. So nice to have an extra mind behind. Abstaining from certain types of foods for periods of time, or for months at a time. Sometimes it's just a liquid diet, and sometimes you're allowed to eat at certain times. So again, within contexts, food is often manipulated and moved around and circuiting around our lives based on how we are connected to the life around us, right? So if we are more religiously connected, then food plays more of a religious role to us. And if we are more fitness connected, then maybe it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I want to talk about entertainment. Yes, having a good time, not just the celebratory occasions, but just going out and having a good time. You want to drink, you want to have your chips, your munchies, your wings, and your waffles, and you want to go and do all those things. And part of that is all part of the courtship in entertainment. You're going out there, you're having a good time, but you're also courting. So there is also use for food when trying to entertain or be entertained. So there's that, right? There is punishment. Okay, now we're going over to the darker side of food use, right? There's punishment. I remember as a child being punished with food. If you don't eat all your food, or if you don't eat what's set before you, you go hungry, right? If you've done something wrong or you did something that you shouldn't have, you might be told to skip a meal. You might be told you can't have snacks. You might be told you can't do this. It's used as forms of punishment, right? Even that's like in a micro example, but in a macro example, mass starvation. Using food to control the masses is also a form of punishment. You punish the people, you make them really, really hungry. They have to submit to you. They have to do what you want them to do. It's a form of punishment and control. Schools have used it. I remember when my kids were in school and the school was on lockdown. Well, of course, not every culture knows about schools being locked down, but in some neighborhoods, schools go on lockdown. If there's a fight in the school or something like that, the school would go on lockdown. And when it goes on lockdown, you're forced to eat your lunch in your classroom. And so that changes your perspective about food and your relationship with food, even in just that moment. Why is that moment so important? That moment is important because when you eat and the way in which you eat, like if you're really stressed, like it changes how your body converts that energy, converts that nourishment into use, into physical use. So it's not really a healthy thing to eat distressed, to eat stressed. But a lot of students in schools do have those situations. And I hope one day that changes. So punishment is a form of, is one way in which people use or misuse food. Social order, we talked about that. And then personal regulation, right? That's the part that really impacts us as traumatic violation survivors greatly. Is that personal regulation, or that trying to regulate that internal environment. And sometimes we use it to regulate the external environment. There's nourishment, which is what food is for, nourishment, right? Sustaining human life, sustaining life. Everything eats something, right? Everything is consuming something. So that's just your core basic nourishment. But then you have supplements, then you have deprivation, right? And then all of those things we talked about fit into those three categories, and are sometimes even shared by those categories at different stages in a person's life. So when we talk about supplement, what are we supplementing? Like, I have these vitamins here. I'm not trying to promote anybody, but I have these vitamins, and they are vitamin supplements, which I should probably just take one now anyways. But they are vitamin supplements, and they come in the form of little milk chocolate chews. Now this is a dietary supplement, calcium plus D. So, my palate is enjoying that. Really nice. So what is great about that is that I just took a supplement for something that my nutrition needed that. My diet needed that. So there are some things that we need and we don't supply them. I could also get vitamin D by going out and standing in the sun. But I'm not always in the sun because The sun hurts my eyes. So if you have light sensitivity, you might not be in the sun enough. So you supplement it with some vitamin D. Choose. That tastes good, right? I remember taking some vitamin C when I was younger. That stuff tasted awful. I suppose you want to get it down with these were chewables, and ooh, make your eyes twitch and everything. Ugh. So it's not necessarily palatable, but you still need it, right? And sometimes the market has realized that if we don't enjoy it, we might not take care of ourselves. We might not do what we need to do to eat it up. Well, this is taking a long time to chew. I don't want to just swallow it because I just had digestive tract issues where I had a polyp removed from my intestines, so I have to chew. I can't just be swallowing anyhow. In any event, that's better. That was a whole lot of chewing. It was good though. So we are compelled, right? We are compelled to create that balance. When something goes just, when the wires get stressed up here and the stressors are sent out to the body, one of our default coping mechanisms may be food, maybe establishing a stronger relationship, a stronger bond with food. There are different reasons why we do that. Some people actually make that establishment to comfort themselves. It's like comfort foods, right? Or guilty pleasure foods, right? And so they may wind up doing it because I'm stressed right now. I just need something that makes me feel good. Okay, so there is that type. And there is a type that one of the types that I have, which is if I maintain a certain physical appearance, I might not be as attractive to the prowler and to the predator. So in my own self-defense, in my own personal firewall, food has been incorporated to maintain a sense of safety and security, right? So I weigh out my options. Am I ready to feel? Am I able to feel? Am I capable of feeling safe and comfortable? And am I secure enough to not have to feel like I need this? I haven't yet. That's just not where I am. But honesty in all of this is what's most important. That day may come, and I might not look the way that I do today. But for now, I'm comfortable this way, right? And so food serves many purposes in our mental processes, right? And then there are those who use food as self-punishment because they are accustomed to food being about punishment. They wind up punishing themselves with food. And this leans towards a side of deprivation rather than supplementation. So if you have internal emotional voids and you're trying to supplement those voids, like feelings of love and feelings of comfort and safety and security with food, that's supplementation. And there's deprivation. That is, food makes me this. I hate food because it does this to me. I hate food because it does that to me. And they use food to further punish and inflict punishment upon themselves emotionally. So you'll find that there's a lot more other deeper disorders that go along with that, just like there are deeper disorders that go along with supplementation. So you have the society looking at the traumatic violation survivor and making all kinds of judgments and accusations. Oh, they eat too much. If they could just shut their mouth, if they could just push away from the table, they need to learn to quit. They need to know when to stop, when enough is. All these like just judgments about the use of food. Right? The use of food in someone's life is very intimate. It's a very, very intimate. It's a very intimate experience. You love certain foods, right? You love people, certain people, not everybody. You love certain people, right? You love certain foods. It becomes very unhealthy when you need to make a choice between people and what other things you love. right? That's when we are no longer at a place of moderation or balance. So that's when the scales tip, when you need to maintain that over the relationships, the real life relationships that you have with people. So, and communities, you know, when you're not able to have those, then you have to like stand back and say, okay, something isn't well with this picture. So I won't go into all the details because it'd be good to you just get the book and read it. But at some point, you know, just in a small nutshell, so to speak, I thought it was good to kind of lay out and define that, you know, food is it's acceptable to have food deprivation in certain circumstances, like in religious circumstances, you know, where people and their children, even the children come right along with it. Are not allowed to do this, not allowed to eat this, not allowed to eat that. And, you know, that has consequences, that has ramifications on the intimacy with food. And the correlations that we tie to that in our youth do manifest differently as we're adults and as we have had some life experiences. And especially if we have been impacted and impaled with traumatic violation, then that takes what we understood before and really magnifies it into the brain's, how the brain settles and resolves itself with how do I use this information post-trauma, right? Because what we understood it to be for here, pre-trauma, pre-traumatic violation, is then filtered through and reestablished in how it will now be used in the new system post-traumatic violation. Okay, I remember lots of things that happened to me with food when I was a child. I used to have to gamble for my food at school. Literally, I would take the little pint of milk that they would give us in elementary school, and I would dare anyone to put as much food on my tray as they could, and I would challenge whomever whomever wanted to challenge me back to drink that milk the fastest. And I had like a little, you know, method to it all. I had a little science to it. And I never lost. I always won, but they always were willing to challenge me, and the food was always on the table. And this was the food that I began to hoard with. I began to hoard food because there wasn't food at home. My mom would be so sick, either from substance abuse, or she would be sick from the physical ramifications of substance abuse. And then we would be without, you know, she hadn't shopped and there's nothing in the fridge but condiments, you know. So these things established unhealthy terms and conditions with food and how I used food and how I navigated food. And then I would later hoard, you know, my hoard magnified from needing to have food to make sure that I didn't not have food later. I would want more, like give me as much as you can give me, because that I might not have enough for this meal, the next meal, the next meal, the next meal, like you just didn't know. So you had to kind of just keep taking it in. So every day I would gamble for the food. And then when I went off into various foster homes, I would, even though there was ample food in the refrigerator, they always provided, but I still didn't know if I would have food. Like, what if they decided not to give me food? I needed to make sure that if I got punished for food, for not being able to eat, I would have my own little stash. Man, I had all kind of rotten shit under my bed, under my pillows, all kind. It was bad. This is all hindsight, mind you. But in that moment, those fears established relationships with food that continued and progressed on. Then my biological mom had a very sick habit of eating in front of us and then not giving us food. So she would have food and bring us all to the table. And then she would give us maybe a little something. Or like, let's say, she would wait until the breakfast cereal got soggy because she knew we didn't like it soggy. But she wanted to make sure we would eat it anyway because she said so. So she would make sure that the food was soggy, you know, get the food together, put it on the table, and call us late so it would be nice and soggy. And of course, then we're looking at a bowl of mush, and we don't like we're kids still. We want to eat like other kids. We want to eat what looks like food. Or she would do things like make herself a nice hamburger, like a big fat juicy hamburger, all the condiments on it and everything, and then serve us raw hamburger meat on our plate, right? So this established a different type of challenged relationship with food. Mind you, there's no disorder for this type of thing, but it is a disorder of the mind. It is how the mind has reordered and restructured its relationship with food. There's not a label for everything. And it's unfortunate that there are so many labels, but without some kind of label, it's hard to define and qualify what's happening, right? But in any event, as I had my own children and grew up, I had a very difficult time eating in front of them. Very difficult time eating in front of them. And I mean difficult, like, and sometimes I couldn't eat in front of them at all. I had to make sure that they ate. In fact, I would have my plate and let them come up to me like hen pecking chickens and eat off of my plate. And I would be so happy, be like, oh, I fed my babies. You know, they would eat their own food and then come and eat mine too. So I would feel like I did the right thing. So this is my mind's interpretation of what the right healthy thing to do is, because that's how my brain fixed it. So yes, I underwent the traumatic violation, but my brain repaired itself with this misconstrued, unhealthy, and it is natural, but not natural at the same time, right? So it was an unhealthy perspective of how to have a relationship with food. I would go out and eat. I would go out and eat and be like, whew, I don't have to eat with the kids. I didn't put two and two together, but it was kind of like I was saying it, but not comprehending it, you know, at the time. I would go out shopping. Some of you can relate to this. And you buy up the whole place. You know, I'm trying to refrain from cursing because I'm getting excited. And then I know, like, oh my God, don't curse. So, you know, you want to buy up the whole store. And you're like, oh, you know, there could be a storm. There could be this. There could be that. And so you're like loading up your cart and you're like spending all this money. And you bring it home and you stock your you stock your pantry. You stock the fridge. You stock all the cupboards. And a lot of stuff spoils. A lot of stuff expires. And you're just like, what was I doing? Like, why did I buy all those things? But you still didn't make the connection. You didn't want to be without. So as an adult, I was hoarding, but I was hoarding differently and for different reasons. But it's just how my mind shifted the information and its use of that information. And then there were situations where, you know, I thought, oh, well, you know, I'll outgrow this because one day my kids will get older and it won't be such a big deal. But I still have trouble eating in front of other people's children, in front of any children. I feel like I'm eating their food, right? There's no term for this disorder, but I do have it. And there are lots of experiences that are unique to traumatic violation survivors. We won't always talk about them. I'm laying it out and unveiling it in hopes that it helps somebody else, right? So the idea, I'm watching my time, right? A little bit over. It's okay. I'm getting there. The idea that food and relationships with food and the intimacy that we have with food and the various ways in which we use food and or misuse food are all a part of our human behavioral process and how we're exposed and how we developed those relationships. And how does that translate for you? How are you using food and how is food being used in your life? What does that relationship look like? How deep is that relationship? What position does it hold in your life? Like, how important is it that food maintains certain voids or certain deprivations in your life? I remember times where I avoided food. I remember times where I was an adult. I remember the first time I realized I was a food hoard. I remember the first time I remembered I was stealing a piece of cake from myself. Swear for goodness, okay? So I had my own apartment. It was my second apartment. It was my second apartment, and I had my my newly young baby, my newly born baby. She was about 8, 9 months at the time, and so I had gone to the kitchen. I had been given a birthday cake. It was my birthday, and I rarely ever get anything for my birthday, or had ever had anybody give me anything for my birthday. But it was like this chocolate cake. It was for my birthday, and I had taken a slice home with me, or I think it was 2 slices, because it was my adopted parents that gave me the cake, and I took 2 slices home. And so it was my cake, but I put it in the fridge, and I caught myself in the act of sneaking to the refrigerator to take a fork full of cake. And then I closed the refrigerator door and I ate it, and it was so good, and it made me feel so wonderful. And I was just like, oh, this is so peaceful and so great right now. So I just opened the door, and like literally my whole body was like sneaking. And I opened the lid and I took a little bit more, and it was just like I was doing the same thing I used to do in my foster and adoptive home. It was like I would take just enough that nobody would notice I took it, but I wanted to have it, A, because it made me feel good, and B, because what if I get punished later and I'm not allowed to have it? And if I ask for it, I might be told that I'm not allowed to have it. So not being allowed to have food had a different connotation to me than the average person who says, you know what, the answer is no. Because, I did that with my children. They come and they would say, can we have cookies? And I would say, no, we're not going to have cookies because we're about to have dinner and I don't want you full on cookies. That's would have a different meaning to my children than it had to me. To me, no meant I was going to starve. I was never going to see when I was going to have food again. Who knows? So my brain's traumatic response and default response was, oh my gosh, protect and preserve. This is your life. This is your vitality. Even though you're not, you don't have the ability and the age and the wisdom and the experience to comprehend. This is hindsight definition, right? But at the time, your body is functioning like that. Just like you don't understand why you're walking, but you see other people walking. So as a baby, you start walking, you start becoming like the people around you. Your genetic composite is developing, and it doesn't stop developing. It just keeps developing until you're not anymore, right? And so all of these things are just naturally happening. You're naturally developing and you're going along, but there are other things you don't comprehend, but you're aware of. So I was aware of a lot of these things kind of happening, but couldn't put definition to them because I was too young to comprehend them, right? And then as I got older and I kept practicing them and I became interdependent in life and independent in life, I began to apply them the way they should be applied under those set of circumstances, differently than when I was dependent, right? Again, the mind makes the adjustments and the necessary adaptations that it needs to continue to function as an adult. What does that look like for you? What was your relationship development with food? Because it starts there and it continues where you are until you become aware and conscious enough to make the shifts necessary. Some you will find are, they're not damaging, but I could modify them a little bit. I need to alter them a little now until I can do more with them later. Do I want to eventually change my relationship with food? I have made great strides. Absolutely. But I grant myself as much time as my being needs I just make sure that I am always progressively working on it. That's the main thing, is just make progress. Just make little, like, this is never going to be an overnight thing. Anyone who thinks you can restore from traumatic violation like somebody quits smoking cold turkey is more out of their mind than they are. You're outside the outside. Round the outside, round the outside. So the thing that is a good idea and a healthy idea is to grant yourself the grace and the timeline necessary to grow into the transformation, whatever that transformation is. Just make sure that you've identified it. Yeah, you've identified what the situation is. You've identified how you are using or supplementing your life with this particular food. I mean, it's food that we're talking about, but this could be anything. This could be drag racing. This could be alcoholism. This could be drugs. But at some point, right, when you're not living within the confines of moderation, at some point it becomes the compulsion becomes an addiction, a dependency, right? And that's where you get, 600 pounds and 500 pounds, because the thing in which you were internally managing with, or internally regulating with, has now regulated you. Regulated your entirety of your being, not just you regulating it. Now the roles are reversed. Your body has become dependent. Your mind and the chemistry within you has become dependent on that regulation. So to make progress prevents that. That is how you prevent that from happening, right? You're maintaining, but at the same time as you are maintaining, you are transforming, right? So you're applying these small changes incrementally. That is always the key. Incrementally, right? You're applying these small changes incrementally. And as you grow along, you discover that, hey, I am not as, I haven't needed to lean on this as much. As a result, some of these other things are transforming in my life, and that's good. So you just have to gauge and litmus test the small steps. Take those baby steps. Baby doesn't start running. You take the baby steps, and then they start to walk, holding on and stumbling, and this, that, and the next thing. You go through every stage. Every stage counts. Do all the work, right? And if you're connected to somebody, or you love somebody who has endured traumatic violation, this is how you can influence them. Not with words of discouragement or words of aggressive words of instigation or anything like that, but instead with making these small insights in how can we have a goal to attach to the insight, and what behavior or what actions can we take and begin taking and actually apply, right? So honoring the process, grace, and some more freaking grace, and a whole lot more mercy. So I know it was a longer one, right? It's a longer one, but it's a big subject, right? And like I said, we talked about food, but pretty much you can supplement this food with any other type of activity. Even healthy, something that looks healthy, can be self-destructive, because too much of anything can still kill you, even if it's a good thing, right? So you want to be able to find the center, find moderation. And mind you, I'm going to do a whole thing on moderation, because people are a little undereducated about what moderation is and how that works. Moderation is not a reflection of you. My moderation is different than another man's moderation, because it is about what I have been exposed to. And my moderation could be here, and you would have been here and here, but I was here and here. So moderation where you end up being moderated is different than what I consider moderation, right? So my moderation may look extreme, right? Or maybe to somebody who was even more extreme than me, their moderation looks extreme to me. So it is a matter of finding the center, which is personal to your own experience, and just ensuring that it's safe and healthy for you and for those connected to you, right? Because if it's safe and healthy for you, safe and healthy, not just something that is your personal like opinion, safe and healthy for you is organically safe and healthy for those who are connected to you. And if somebody doesn't, want to have that much exposure to this, that, or the next part of your life, that's okay. Love the part of me that you're capable of. And if I'm doing something that's safe and healthy for me and that is uncomfortable for you still, that's okay. That's what makes us unique and different. There are lots of things. I have people that I know and I'm just like, yo, I love these people, but I cannot be up in there doing that because it's just not me. It doesn't fit me, right? So at some point you begin to find a balance within the system. Anyways, before I go on a tangent about that, we will be back with more. I will be back with more. But that is my my initial discussion on my initial conversation on, and actually this isn't a conversation. I haven't had anybody in my chat, but one day I'll have somebody in my chat. I invite you to come and chat with me. And we'll be able to have conversations about how this actually works in your own life, and could offer some suggestions about how to help you in the development process for yourself. Always, always, always blanket yourself and insulate yourself with all of the required network of support that you need, whether that is your medical physician, your practitioner, your therapist, or your psychologist, or your spiritual leader, your spiritual guide, or your circle of friends, your close circle of friends who you can trust. You need the full blanket of support, right? So your peer groups are important, and each one offers something, and you will filter it through many times before deciding how best to apply yourself towards your own restoration process, right? So I encourage you to talk until someone listens about all the various aspects, not just one issue, but each issue as they surface, as they emerge from you, right? So as they're coming to the surface and as they're emerging, that is your body's sign and a message to you that now is the time, that there's readiness, that there is some degree of release in your brain that says, you know what? Hey, I don't need to protect her so much from this. She's ready to deal with this. Here it is. So if it surfaces and it emerges, it's an opportunity. Go my next part about triggers, right? Triggers part 2, you'll hear more about that. So taking the opportunity and the trigger being an opportunity. So it's nice talking with you in the future, because you'll be watching this in the future. Take good care, and all you do be well. Make good choices, and do what is in the best interest of your personal self-health. Take good care. Bye-bye.